Featuring industry insiders from Impetus and Forrester and moderated by a technology veteran, Solutions Review presents the Expert Roundtable, an in-depth panel discussion focused on solving strategic enterprise challenges.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to this Expert Roundtable featuring Impetus and focused on the next generation of observability in the era of agentic AI. As technology moves from traditional systems to cloud and AI, observability is changing too. With more AI agents in use, teams need better ways to understand performance, security, and optimization across their systems. So today, we're hosting an analyst-led discussion with experts from Forrester Research and Impetus that will explore how observability has evolved, whether today's tools are ready for these new demands, and why observability is becoming essential in the agentic AI era. To drive this conversation, we have invited software industry veteran Jeff Weiss. Jeff is the CMO of Impetus and brings over 25 years of hands-on enterprise software experience in marketing, strategy, sales, and partnering. Jeff, I'm going to hand this event over to you now. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much, Doug. Happy to be here and welcome to our listening audience. I want to introduce to you our panel today that you'll be hearing from to discuss this topic of unified observability, how just everything that's going on in IT today, principally driven by data and AI, is fundamentally changing how we not just design and develop solutions, but how we manage and govern them. And this is now have ramifications across an organization, not just IT, not just finance, line of business, and even up to the CEO's office. Carlos Casanova, he is principal analyst from Forrester. He is their lead thought leader on AI ops, which is really at the center of what we're talking about today. His experience and expertise sits in observability, digital experience monitoring, app performance monitoring, and either infrastructure monitoring. So really from the foundation to the top. We also have Shilpi. She is our vice president of cloud and data engineering. She has a global staff that delivers solutions for some of the world's top financial, aviation, retail, and consumer good organizations. And she's going to be talking to you about the IP, the technology that is going behind reinventing how companies bring a unified observability approach when they're dealing with the new workflows that we're seeing in organizations today. But first, to set the stage, what's going on? Is this relevant to me? And where are the trends pushing organizations today?
Hey, Jeff, thanks. Thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. It's kind of interesting, where we've come from, where we're going. You mentioned a little bit of my background, and I spent the bulk of my career as a practitioner. I was a IT director in global financial services. Spent a lot of years, on the keyboard, developing. So I kind of learned that side of things. Hardware design engineer, enterprise architect. So I really lived through this progression that we're kind of living, we're going through today. And we think about where we've come from. You mentioned, the APM, the application performance monitoring, and all these things. And so much of this really goes back even further. When you think about where we've come from this, monolithic space, where we had very clear-cut applications and systems, and everything just kind of moved through that. But, not too long ago, we started seeing some changes. We started seeing, the advent of Kubernetes and microservices. And when we were already capturing all that information, we were doing most of it manually. We were hoping some organizations maybe were a little bit more advanced in doing some sort of scripted automation, but mostly manual and definitely all manually triggered. When we went to this whole new space and we started, getting into microservices, you just couldn't keep up with that. We did our best, and that's great, but we just couldn't really keep up with that. And that's when you started getting into, there's a lot of unknown unknowns, because it wasn't nice, clean code that just went straight forward, step 1, step 2, step 3. And that really caused some more grief. And then once we were already kind of inundated with that, the whole cloud native aspect starts coming along, and it's even more. It's more data. We move into this open telemetry world. From a standardization, but the amount of data that we were dealing with, just the volumes at the pace at which it was created, was just tremendous. And that's where we started seeing a lot of these APM tools, or these monitoring tools that became APM, really start moving into this observability space. The problem was, we still, in kind of where we've advanced through, we lost the sense of context, or we never had the sense of context beyond the human and tribal knowledge that we used to have about this system. But when we went to this world where things are ephemeral, and you might have 7 units of this, and then all of a sudden it's 57 units, and then it's back down to 7, and that happened in a matter of a minute, 2 minutes. There was no way that we could really track this manually. So we started adding more capabilities. We started doing more contextualization, and that's where the observability came up. And then we said, okay, well, that's great. Hey, look at this new thing, these LLMs, large language models. And we said, okay, there's a whole nother level of complexity here. How could we possibly keep up with that? We can't. And that's when we got into AI Ops, which is AI for IT operations. And in addition to our traditional telemetry, apps, networks, the traditional infrastructure, the cloud, the context comes from understanding, hey, are there 17 people on the system or 1,700 people on the system, all the way out to that real user monitoring? Is this a peak business cycle? It's a financial system. It's the end of the month, end of the quarter, end of the year. Hey, that's more important. So there's a prioritization there. And that's the intelligence that we now require to run our systems. And we need to just take a lot more progressive actions in how we monitor. And I tend to not use the word monitoring, because it really brings us to a very reactive world. That's where we came from. And now we're really moving into a proactive world. We're moving into a preventative world. And when you look at some of the emerging actions, this is from one of our priority surveys this year, and you look at the commonality here across all 3 of these things. What is it? It's, we need to go from, hey, something already blew up, we've already negatively impacted our business, to, hey, is something happening? Do I see a pattern here? Oh, I recognize this. Can I get ahead of it? Can I act quicker? That plays right into, hey, my systems are now more resilient. I can keep it up a little bit better. When we have a lot of pressure on the system, the amount of users, the resources, there's a lot of pressure there, and we can fight through it. We can get through it, and the systems are resilient. And one of the important things is to really enrich and empower our teams to be making those decisions that much faster. Because what we're able to do is we're able to enrich their work. We're able to enrich the tickets from which they get kicked off. And when you look at this slide, it is a bit complex, but when you think about it, from working from the bottom up, manual, that's our traditional pathways. When we start feeding information into the tickets and into L1, L2, L3, they're enhanced. Maybe they don't have to do the full search. Maybe they don't have to think about, hey, where did this happen? Because the system and these AI ops platforms can say, hey, Jeff, hey, Shilpi, this isn't happening in LATAM. It's not in EMEA. This is a North American-based thing. So it saves you maybe that hour or even 5 minutes from having to look at those systems. And then it provides you that other information. Say, hey, by the way, not only is it not in LATAM and not in EMEA, I've seen this pattern before. Here are some incidents from our historicals. Here's some changes from the historicals that all kind of correlate. We're not quite at causal yet, but we're at least at corollary. And for a L1 or an L2 person to get that instantaneously with the ticket, that's massive. Even better, can we bypass manual triage, which certain organizations are doing? So what happens is we really get into a much more progressive posture. And then we say, hey, how about if I take this observability data? Let me get this all the way back to service design. Let me get it back to development. Let me get it into my SRE teams or my CI/CD pipelines. That's those top two lines. I'm able to now enrich the work that the SREs, the site reliability engineers, with real-time observability data about a system that has not maybe failed yet, but is pointing in that direction. And why do I know that? How do I know that? Because I can correlate that against our historical information. So when you think about the opportunity we have today, because the power of some of our systems and our monitoring platforms, the big monitoring platforms, they can take all this telemetry, the metrics, the logs, the traces, the end-to-end aspects of it, add into it the user component in real time, add in the business seasonality in real time, the wealth of information that it can provide to you to make a decision, to make it faster is tremendous. And that's where, like I said, we're really kind of moving into that space where we're able to really bring the DevOps community more to that point and that pinnacle that we've been trying to fight for, I don't know how many, a decade, 2 decades that we've been talking about DevOps, but we're able to really bring that closer, much closer than we've talked about before. And yes, there's a progression, there's a maturity path there that we need to work through. And when you look at your organization, you kind of start at the bottom and you say, hey, we don't have AI ops in place. We're very reactionary. What do we need to do first? Well, the first thing we need to do is, what do I have? Can I see everything? Do I have actual insights into what my environment looks like? Okay, once I have that, can I get ahead of it? Can I get a little bit more proactive in how I engage things? Well, I'm going to need certain sets of algorithms and artificial intelligence mechanisms and vehicles to give me, hey, can I have a little bit of causality here? It doesn't have to be perfect, but it can, lead me in that direction. The enhanced judgment is what I was talking about before. Now we're saying, hey, it's going to look at that information. It's going to summarize it for me. It's going to extract the noise. It's going to say, hey, Carlos, this isn't LATAM. This isn't that. I've gone through the 75 incidents over the last 2 years, summarized them, giving you something in a generative form so that you don't have to read 75. You read the summarization and say, okay, I think I want that. What are the links and the citations for how you came up with that summarization? I can now look at it. So we're really taking a lot of that mundane, repetitive work that any person in support is normally going through. And we're eliminating that and getting them to actually use their brains more so than their hands. Then we get into the more advanced things, intelligent automation. That triggers some automation, not a notification to a user. And then we get to the world that we'd love to approach. We'll never get there fully, but there are components within our organization, within our IT operations, that absolutely should be fully autonomous. There should be no reason why a human is looking at a router flapping and wasting time with that. We know exactly what that is. Black and white, this is what it is. Black and white, here's the remediation. There's no reason why we should waste the precious time of a network engineer that we pay handsomely to do something to actually go deal with that. We know what it is and they're comfortable with that. So, so that's kind of like all the work that we're going through. But, ultimately in the end, what is it about? It's really about what does it mean to the business? What are the benefits that we really get there? And that's really where we're looking at. We want to see, that IT resilience. I talked about that. How do we get there? It's through proactive and suggestive alerting. We want some top line revenue. Well, if we improve the user experience, if we improve the customer experience, that will give us some top line revenue, or should. I mean, obviously, if our product is horrible, we're not gonna sell it better. But if we improve the experience from the users and customers, in theory, we're going to sell more product. We're going to get more top line revenue. If we simplify our environment, we get rid of some of the complexity. We optimize how we operate. We eliminate the 75 tools and we go down to 15. There's bottom line savings. The data and ticket enrichment, I've talked about that repeatedly. Amazing. Maybe we can improve employee experience. Wouldn't that be amazing? Retention, attraction, that's a huge piece. And then, the ones that we normally expect, lowering the MTTR. We do some process automation. We do the auto remediation. The mean time to identification, the mean time to detection, the mean time to repair, all of those things benefit. So there's a tremendous amount of time, that we're spending here, Jeff, with improving certain things that we've been really, really looking forward to for years. And the capabilities of these platforms are finally really making a lot of this real world, the reality that we can take value in.
Thank you very much. That whole spectrum of organizations moving from reactionary to an autonomous, automated approach, it sounds compelling, but now the question is, how do you do it? Where does this solution come from, and how does it mesh in with what organizations have? A big question we get today, or a big issue that we get today, is organizations are vested. They're vested in their data. They're often vested in the tools that they're using that have organically grown. And so now I'd like to bring in Shilpi, our lead vice president of engineering, who has seen this up close, seen it directly, about how traditional organizations have approached this. And Shilpi, I'd like you to lay out some of the things you've observed and some of the things that we're doing at Impetus to try to achieve this goal of moving toward automation, accelerated decision-making, and simplification. So let me throw the mic over to you, and can you bring a perspective to this?
Thank you so much, Jeff, and thanks for detailed insights, Carlos. I took down a few notes while you were talking, and some of the pieces are really relating to what we are doing. Like we are churning more and more data. The whole context is getting decentralized, sitting in one monolithic in data center to today on cloud, and all this AI enablement, Gen AI, now Agentic AI. So whole of the context is largely getting decentralized, and developers have access to so much more power. There is literally no dearth of what processors they can use, what ecosystem they can provision. Largely enterprises have literally no restrictions on how much they can provision and use, and with that comes a great responsibility in terms of ensuring that the entire business context, user context is kept in purview and ecosystem of the observability. So a couple of things that I noted: one was decentralization, one you spoke about the business context, the reactive approach to monitoring and acting to the incidents on the production. And one very, very important aspect is this entire paradigm of observability driven development actually starts at the base. Agentic AI observability, observing the intelligent system, IntelliOps, that's the outcome, while it actually starts at the lowest layer. And the last, and I'm going to weave in all of these as to where the market sits and what we have in terms of Impetus IP. The last point is we really want our engineers to do what engineers are meant to do. If something can be built intelligently, it can be automated, it should be. And our systems or the products that we have, they should be smart and intelligent enough to identify those paradigms and create a intelligent work around that. So if you see, the market is crowded today with tools, solutions which are promising operational excellence and observability. They talk about efficiency, they talk about addressing all the dimensions. Most of the hyperscalers have their own solutions, but what are we actually ending with? There is largely a fragmented view of reality. There are multiple dashboards, there is no single source of truth. Decision makers struggle largely with the correlation of data itself. There are 5 or 6 dashboards. There is one up for the cost, one for performance, one for governance. There is no single view where somebody can actually make out with the business context what is happening within the ecosystem. Where can I see end-to-end processing and what is working, what is not working, where am I paying? So fragmented visibility is a very real problem. Lack of business context. The other aspect is what the tools actually show you is largely your spend, your utilization, but not the context of why it is important. It tells you that these are the critical loads. They are having a lot of resources. They are an optimization candidate, but CXOs and the C-level execs really don't want to uh, worry about the cost. They rather want to optimize their spends and want to spend in the right context. So that is where the business context is extremely important. The entire approach to observability today is reactive, not proactive. It's not preventive, it's largely reactive, not predictive, not preventive. So that's another aspect where we want to ensure that critical systems understand the seasonality, understand the customer behavior, understand the business context, and accordingly, they are autonomous, self-healing to a certain extent, and stay up and tight when they are needed the most for the organization. And a lot of times, a mix of all these leads to false intelligence. There's no real decisioning that anybody can take on top of these tools, despite having a tool sprawl across the board in almost all the enterprises. So now we've talked about challenge and talking about how Impetus Prism helps addressing these aspects in a very practical, in a very real world way. Now, it's a tool that brings a unified agentic end-to-end observability, governance, FinOps to the table. Now, when we say, and we often call it Prism becomes the nervous system of your data platform. Now, why is the data platform aspect important? Now, I'll go back and touch upon what Carlos mentioned, that it all starts at the base. You got to have your matrices, your traces, your insights right captured at the data platform level. And if you've got your lineages, your governance charged and metered right there, you can actually build an end-to-end cost intelligence on top of it. You can build a correlated lineage of your jobs on top of it, and that in turn feeds into an end-to-end observability at a platform level, on top of which all these agentic, traditional AI applications, generative AI applications, and agentic AI applications sit upon. Now, another very important aspect in the world where we operate. A lot of these companies deal with data that is largely very governed under a lot of compliances and government policies. So governance, policy enforcement, auditing, tracing, all these are very, very critical aspects. And the decentralization aspect, again, what Carlos touched upon, as we move from monolith to cloud to microservices and open architectures, this whole aspect is becoming very, very difficult to control. So all of these things, a lot of enterprises that I have worked with, all of this comes as an afterthought. The primary goal is get into the cloud. Everything will magically get solved and all the applications will become intelligent after that. But the real Pandora box opens once you are in the cloud. No visibility into what is happening, what somebody is doing, governances, compliances, cost, and even a simple incident. L1, L2 support units, they kind of struggle across the world to get an RCA because suddenly the data is all over the place. So we have built-in automated RCA units that look at your data, understand the context, look at it into the past tickets that have happened into that particular context, and recommend a solution to the L1 and L2. So it largely helps even reduce the number of incidents, and if it happens, the mean time to resolve and mean time time to identify is considerably reduced. The system operates in a proactive, predictive, preventive maintenance mode. So it operates on the principle of 3 Ps: predictive, proactive, and preventive ops. So all the AI insights are built in a manner where it can understand the patterns, context, the seasonality aspect, the user experience aspect, and build it together when the recommendations are made. So they are not disjoint, they are not out of context just on the basis of statistics. It's well wired with the ecosystem of the enterprise that we are working with. And lastly, it does have self-healing agentic capabilities where it is intelligent enough to understand itself and other applications in the ecosystem. So again, we are not skipping human in the loop entirely, but at the same time, it comes with classic actionable insights which really reduce the time to resolve if any issue happens. So if I have to summarize the offering here, Prism largely stands on 3 key pillars. It unifies the entire context of a distributed ecosystem. It's multi-mode. It spans across different clouds, across different platforms that actually are part of the ecosystem, and brings a single pane of visibility for the teams to see what is happening in the ecosystem. So it literally gives you an end-to-end visibility in a single pane. It is intelligent. It has AI driven recommendations. It optimizes your workloads. It looks at your intelligent applications. It looks at the resource utilization. In fact, in fact, it works on production, but the entire paradigm where it operates in the context of right and best practices of coding, query writing, workload optimization towards the left. So it can flag the things and let the sponsors know that these are the things, and it can very well be used in the lower environments also. So make sure that these things and these responsibilities are already catered to in the lower environment. And of course, it really operates in a proactive, predictive manner where it can actually sense what's working great and what is needed to make that greatness continue in the ecosystem in a predictive manner. So it takes care of our entire business context, usage, SLAs. In fact, even the details like what are your P1 applications, in case something goes red, who all needs to be notified, what actions needs to be taken to make sure if the resiliency and SRE team is activated, if the DR is built, how it needs to be triggered. So all those aspects are built in. As the platforms grow and AI piece becomes central, more and more central to the operations. Now, the biggest question that we are all dealing with is how the observability and optimization will keep up with that pace. Now, this is where exactly the Prism sits both as a centerpiece and as a cross-functional aspect, where all these aspects are taken care of in terms of unified observability across different platforms, across different layers, right? From the infra to your data platform, to your pipelining, to the unified data layer, API layer, intelligent applications, classic ML models, and taking care of agent identity, context, and all those aspects, to the agentic aspects of it. And the entire platform itself is built in a agentic manner. So largely, it itself operates in a scalable agentic mode. So I'll also briefly touch upon how Impetus Prism has largely revolutionized the DevOps life cycle for us. So we now call it IntelliOps. And this has come from the experience that we have had from some of the largest clients in terms of what do they need from the operational systems and the DevOps team today, and how that entire landscape is reformed and transformed for us with the introduction of Prism. So here I'll briefly touch upon, I've spoken about Prism, I've spoken about the context that it handles and talks about, addresses differently. Now I'll talk about how it scales with AI and automation. Now, if you look at it, it operates in 5 fundamental phases. So we start with the discovery aspect where we do an assessment, we try to understand the ecosystem, we understand the cost baseline, what are the different components, what are the pain areas, where is the sprawl, what are the other ecosystem tools around APMs and other things which are into it, what is the agentic landscape today, and what is the expectation, or what do the organization or the enterprise wants to be tomorrow. So all that constitutes to be part of the discovery exercise, and then out of the discovery there is an entire targeted strategy and a plan that is created to optimize the whole ecosystem. Now again, starting from the base, it fundamentally can start with something as simple as tagging. So it largely operates, a lot of things on the cloud ecosystem largely operates around tagging. So we have a very interesting feature called virtual tagging that lets you tag things virtually, where you don't have to actually go back and change the code bases or the infra components to tag them. So it identifies those things and starts working on that to optimize the entire thing, build the reliability and efficiency into the way of working. And then it gets to the, once these optimization candidates are largely identified, then it gets to the automate mode. Now this could be something like your intelligence CI/CD, it could be something around your intelligence in terms of how the governance aspects are taken care of, intelligence in terms of how smartly the queries and workloads are written and distributed across different ecosystem, what should be the total target deployment configuration given the footprint in lower environments and expectation in the higher environment. So all those things are taken care of, and then the operationalization aspect starts. And as I said, it is itself built in an agentic model. It has a lot of agents like an RCA bot that kind of takes care of all the aspects with respect to reducing the MTTR and the incident ratio. It has a SQL Maestro feature, which is again another agent that looks at all the SQL loads and optimizes with the business context. So not just the SQL optimization aspect, but what is the load, where is it running, what time of the day, who's the user, is it part of a P1 process and all. So all this is kind of taken care of. And this does not happen as one-time process. It's a loop. So that observability driven development, I take that term from you, Carlos, that becomes the reality of how the organizations and the IT starts operating. It's not an afterthought. It starts getting to build phase by phase in the DLC, in the development life cycle, and the entire ecosystem from the infra layer to the agentic layer at the top. So I've talked at length about what Prism does, how it is reforming the entire landscape of how development is done. I'll very briefly touch upon who is it for? What is it? Who is it empowering? So if you look at who does it help? It's helping engineering. It's really setting the development best practices right and shifting the responsibility towards left. So keeping the best practices right, but shifting the responsibility to code well towards left. So operates on a left paradigm, and make sure that engineering teams are doing the things right way right from day one. So that observability, performance, governance, cost, all these things are not an afterthought. It helps largely the IT segment and the FinOps to make sure they understand where are they spending. So problem is actually not the cost. I've spoken to a lot of C execs, and they say the problem is not largely about the cost or the spends, but it is about where am I spending, and are my right priority jobs getting the correct ecosystem resources and importance. So it largely helps a lot of IT FinOps people to have visibility across the board. And of course, CXOs, almost everybody has a Gen AI chatter today. So having a trusted, secure, governed IT and AI practices, uh, ensuring all the SLAs are adhered, making sure that everybody is looking at the same version of truth and people know what they are doing and what is happening in the ecosystem. So that gets organizations to a different level of confidence, and they can actually create and add a lot of value to their customers and improve the user experience at the end of the day. So together, it all gets glued in a manner where systems become more robust, they become more independent, and they become lot more predictable. Not in just terms of their operations, but also in terms of the total cost of ownership. Now, this one briefly talks about what has Prism caused for some of the enterprises that I got a chance to work with. So, um, I've literally seen the journey from traditional systems to Hadoop to cloud to where do we stand today, and have understood the pain of it piece by piece as we are progressing. The state of affairs on the observability side or the monitoring side is digressing. So this is the superior outcome that we have caused for enterprise. A single pane of truth, where one view, unified view, gives you end-to-end observability. For some of the enterprises, we have been able to introduce up to 40% cost optimization by making sure that chargebacks are implemented, the resources are tagged, the ops are tagged, and the end-to-end lineage and correlation has been built. We've been able to do tremendous optimization in terms of predicting what do they need in terms of their IT budget forecast and all those things. And in a lot of places, we have been able to introduce a resilient SRE and DR enabled by Prism, where the downtime is considerably reduced for critical applications. It's almost nil for the critical applications because the intelligence is built into the system and systems are worked with in a fail safe mode, and Prism takes care of all those kind of things. And last item that I would like to touch here is about security, compliance, and governance. So the tool is built with very strong auditing and governance capabilities to take care of all of these compliance requirements.
Thank you, Shilpi. Let's have a brief discussion now. I think it was super interesting about the perspective. You know, we didn't get to the need of this kind of unified observability capability overnight. This, you know, Carlos, you laid out how this has organically been building over time. I think we all would agree that inertia, not necessary breakthrough technology, can be some of the biggest challenges in enterprise IT. Everybody's busy, they have limited resources. Something is working in an acceptable way or a tolerable way today. So why go and adopt something new? Am I solving a problem that doesn't exist? Is this discretionary? Is this a luxury versus a necessity? That's a tough decision for any organization because change is hard. Let me open it up to both of you. To our audience here that are saying, maybe this is interesting, some things resonate with me, I'll think about it, right? I think about it can be a very common reaction. Very briefly, Carlos and Shilpi, why should people look at not thinking about it and taking a next step? And where maybe that next step be? Do they need to literally move to a greenfield and rebuild their IT infrastructure, or is there a way to take some baby steps? So first question is why and why now? What would be your viewpoint, starting with you, Carlos?
Think about you're trying to put out a campfire, you're trying to put this out, just can't seem to do it. You finally get it and you look up and you're in the middle of a forest fire. You can't keep up. That's just the reality. We are scrambling constantly. We're putting more and more pressure on all of our support teams, just fix this issue, just fix this issue, just fix, and that's their world. And then you look around, and you're like, wait, there's 75 that, more issues that just built up right behind me. And why is that? When we had, minimal telemetry, something would happen with the system, we'd go look at it, we'd have that time. And even then we felt pressured, and I say we because I was one of those people, we felt pressured then. But you knew that, like, when you were doing that at 3 a.m. on Saturday, because that's when everything breaks, right? You weren't worried about 75 other things breaking or happening during that same exact time. You were going to come in on Monday, we got the issue resolved over the weekend, and that was that. Now, if that happens, there are 75 other things that also happened that are going to be waiting for you, on Monday morning. So it's not like, hey, okay. So that's the big issue. And that's why, not only is it, why do I have to do it? And why do I have to do it now? The pace at which it's, running ahead of us is just massive. So we have a strange dynamic right now when you think about it. Some of this technology, the capabilities of AI and ML, and even some of the advancements in automation over the last 2-3 years, we're like, hey, this is exciting. We can use this to help us. We have all these issues. I can use the automation. I can use the AI to identify this, blah, 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 all these things, right? And then you turn around and you're like, wait, hold it. It's actually generating, for every 3, petabytes of data that I'm able to sort through, it generated 15. Like, wait, so I'm still losing track here. Like, I'm still falling behind further. And that's why it's really not an option, to say like, oh, but maybe we'll wait, or maybe we'll do it. Like, no, it's, I can't remember who I was speaking to the other day. They're generating, I don't know if, I can't remember, it was in the petabytes per day. I mean, so when exactly do you want to wait for? Because that's not in your best favor. The frustration I have with some of this, and Shilpi, this is where some of observability driven development kind of came from, and some of the other research I've been doing at Edge Observability. We need to be more intelligent about what data are we transmitting, what data are we generating, because we all know that 90% of it, 95% we never use and we never look at. And we know that mathematically, after the first and second cognitive pass, we don't necessarily need that to kind of figure out the bulk patterns and trends. So Jeff, to your point with the inertia, that's kind of the issue, right? And to break free of that, the amount of energy you need to break free of that orbit is massive before you get back into a nice calm state. So why and why now? You know what? We're already way behind, and you're not going to get any further. You're not going to get any closer if you wait any longer.
I appreciate that. Shilpi, let me bring you in. You're out there with real world customers, and you're having this conversation. In some cases, they've adopted and they're using Prism. When you walk in the door, can you set the stage of, does what Carlos is sharing, is that what you're seeing? Is that what people are experiencing? And who are the people that are, what is the catalyst why people are kind of rethinking this observability, considering a technology like Prism? Just what's happening in the real world today when you're stepping in the door to these organizations that are, trying to be data driven?
Rewind 10 years or maybe 15. We had data centers. We have couple of servers. We had limited automation, mostly day-end jobs, monthly jobs. The power of now or real time was really a fictional thing back then. Now, fast forward. Now today, everything is automated. Whatever could be digitized is digitized or in the process of getting digitized. The way we are adopting to this generative and agentic AI, whatever could be, in fact, at times I speak to my teams and say everything is actually not an AI problem. A simple automation is an automation. You really don't need to have an Gen AI solution for everything. So there are multiple problems. First, we have actually accumulated so much of data. We have power to process so much more. And in that advent of processing, we are generating more data, as Carlos said. And in that whole tornado of data, it is hard to figure out. I'll take the analogy that Carlos said, and that's so practical and real. One job broke, people are fixing it. There are 75 more sitting in the line, and we don't know how many more, because people who are fixing it, people who are monitoring it, systems who are looking at it, do not have the lineage. They don't understand an upstream, what is the impact downstream, what all will fail around this, what was the chronology, how these things were scheduled together, one job running late, what will be the impact on the entire system, what are the critical components that will fail, who are the critical people in a 5,000 people or 50,000 people organization to be informed that tomorrow these reports will not show up. Can I proactively address some of the situations? We just don't know about it, despite of literally sinking in data. So that is why it's literally now. First, to identify what is happening in the ecosystem. Second, as I said, to control how this power and potential is being used. Like, as I said, everything is not a GenAI problem. We really don't need the GenAI solution for it. So, having a tab upon what is happening, what is being developed, what is actually needed. Third thing, what is actually needed? How much of that you have created is actually in use today? What is the dead wood that can actually be chopped off to save your resources to be used for a critical component in the ecosystem? So all those things are monitoring and observability was always needed, but it has reached to the level where it cannot be addressed in a humanly manner. Throwing in more people really cannot handle that. There has to be an intelligent paradigm where we actually let engineers do what engineers are good at. Human in the loop is needed. But this intelligence, which is available to create the applications, is needed to be built in these observability components also. Only then we can control the whole thing. It's already late. I'd agree to Carlos. It's an afterthought for a lot of enterprises.
Let me build on that. A lot of organizations, they're not starting with nothing. I think both of you have talked about whether it's getting a tool like Splunk, whether it's getting often there's free tools from the hyperscalers and the data platform guys. And, it's kind of like, would you like fries with your Coke? And so you got this tool that just kind of showed up in the box and you turned it on and you're getting some nice graphs, very colorful, and it kind of tells you stuff that's going on and everybody's feeling good. They're feeling informed. They're getting data. So we march along and say, you want to move to this more intelligent, more autonomous, more automated approach and bring in this kind of capability. Are you purging those telemetry tools? Are you harnessing those telemetry tools? The people that are managing those tools that probably have a lot invested, are they part of the picture or not? Can you guys both talk about, maybe starting with Carlos, is how do people get there and what are they doing with some of these existing investments that come across the spectrum? And maybe I'll start with you, Carlos, in terms of the 2B, what should they be doing? Is this a tapestry, an evolution, or a lift and shift?
Yeah, Jeff, look, the one thing that I was, again, haven't been an IT director in global financial services. We had one of everything and a few extra on the shelf. That's very typical of your large global enterprise. It just is what it is. It got there for whatever reason. It got there, a lot of it political, a lot of it bureaucratic, a lot of it just, year-end deal. Hey, Jeff, here's 4 new tools. Just throw it in the deal so we can, close out this deal so I can make my sales quota for the year. That's the reality of it, right? Then we add in, hey, there's these open source things. That doesn't cost us anything, right? But it does. And next thing you know, you wake up and you have 75 monitoring tools. Now what do you do? Because this team has 6 of them, that one has this. So when you go to the large platforms, in my opinion, you absolutely have to look at what can we get rid of, because this is a tech debt conversation more than anything. And it's not just tech debt at the product and technology perspective. If I have 17 tools and you have 12 and Shilpi has another 23, that means we have processes now that have to navigate all of these. That means we have policies that have to govern all of those. Well, that's additional tech debt. That also, I mean, I spent years on the security side. That's like, a hacker's, heaven, because there's no way you're keeping all those in check, right? So you want to draw down from, it's not unheard of for a large global enterprise to have 75 in this space. You've got, these three open source pieces. You got these other corporate ones. This one's only at a department level. This one's at, an enterprise level. So the cost associated with getting those big platforms, they're expensive. Nobody can deny that. However, if I move from 75 tools down to 20, the licensing cost, the training cost, think about it, Shilpi, we've been talking a lot about the developers and stuff, right? One of the biggest problems with the developers, besides trying to get them and then retain them, they're stressed out. They're not innovating any longer because they're constantly firefighting. They're also now, you have to say, hey, we have 75 tools. Shilpi, you need to go get trained on these 7. You'll never be a power user on any of them. I'm trained on these 6. I can't be a power user. So Jeff, what that does is it adds professional service costs now, because I have to now contract with that platform company for their professional engineers and professional services, because I don't have time to get into that one. Because I'm spread across 6 of them or 7 or 8. So there's a massive amount of technical debt conversation that happens here. And it is far more, the technology works. That's the thing. The technology works and it will do what you need it to do. Why we don't typically do the tech debt reduction and a lot of these optimization efforts is really the humans. It's the departments. I have 17 people in my group and my VP title demands that I have at least 16. So guess what? I no longer like tech debt reduction because it's my team that's going to get disbanded. So I have a challenge now from my title to maintain. And Shilpi, like we all agree at first. And then when we say, hey, Shilpi, your whole team is going to be disbanded. And you're like, wait, my friend Bob and my friend Adisha and my friend, I don't want to get rid of those. So Jeff, that's why we don't see it, and why, frankly, we've kind of done this to ourselves in large part, is because when push comes to shove, when the difficult decisions are in front of us, we tend to fold, and we don't do what needs to be done. And I'm not saying it's easy. I've been on the receiving end of those decisions, and I've been on the delivery end of those decisions. It's not easy, but that's this magnitude of this wave of data that's coming at us now has just magnified this and made it like 1,000 times worse.
So like with a lot of things, it is it's connected, right? It's technology, it's services, it's the people and the mission of the organization. Well, let me, Shilpi, maybe last word for you as we look to wrap up here. Can you talk about what organizations, if they're taking that first step, let's say they're kind of buying the big picture that Carlos and you have painted today, right? And they're sitting back and they're like, okay, some of this makes sense. I maybe didn't know I could address this in a unified way. I'm hearing something new and it seems like it might be important. But whether you're an 8-year-old with a book report, somebody that's got to make a big dinner, getting started is really hard. How would what maybe 2 or 3 simple things would you recommend organizations either think about, do, or both to get started as they want to consider unified observability? What do they do tomorrow?
Okay, I'll take a cue from both you and Carlos there. It's time to think and do both. Of course, there'll be few early adopters who understand the importance, and eventually everybody would. But at the same time, People who've got their data strategy right and are taking a progression towards their AI strategy. I mean, I largely take it from UJF. I call it enterprise AI strategy that talks about classic AI, ML, generative AI, and agentic AI. So, if they are really taking headways there, it is extremely important they get their observability piece right. Going back to what Carlos mentioned, there is a in. I mean, I've worked with some of the largest banks, insurance companies, and aviation sector giants. There is a tool sprawl across. There's 7,500 tools which are promising this, plus the freebies from the open source and what the hyperscalers bring in. Now, but despite of all this chaos, there is still a certain order that we as IT engineers and organizations have been able to maintain. A lot of people are still following common logging standards across the board. All these components still largely respect open telemetry. All the agentic components still largely operate on the MCP paradigm. So, Prism as a tool can actually coexist and be a fluid layer on top of whatever you have today, because adoption is slow. 7,500 tools, 2,500 departments, 1,500 decision makers, each having their own choices. Getting a total alignment in an ecosystem is rarely possible. So we actually need a tool or a component that sits like a fluid layer, takes up everything, correlates, churns out an insights, and then today you have that pane on top of it. You continue using whatever you're using. You actually don't want to get away with this Splunks or whosoever's of the world, but it'll still sit there, take the things, correlate, and even generate actionable insights. So think about it. A job dies, a critical job gets killed at 12 midnight because of resource crunch, because every other job got triggered at 12. So what should be the most intelligent action before even calling the L1 exec? 12:05, the system load has gone down, please restart, then call the rest of the world. At least, like, if it is a critical job, have it up and running. So it builds in those kind of actionable components into it. So all these things they were needed as of yesterday by larger enterprises who are marching towards the AI adoption and strategy. So sooner the better.
I'd like to thank both of you. This is arguably one of the most important elements or components of future organization success. It's the shiny object, of course, is the technology, its capabilities, and we see the world running to that. And it's kind of a experiment deployment in motion as we discover what these capabilities can be. But the onus to do it in an intelligent way, in a managed way, in a trusted way, that's kind of the air and water behind it. And the insights you brought today, that this can, I think it was a really important insight, that this can build on the tapestry of capabilities you have today and extend it and bring it forward. And in that way, there can be a pragmatic approach to taking something that can be revolutionary, but you can get there in a way that doesn't overwhelm your organization, and the technology and capabilities are there today. What I heard from you, Carlos, is start yesterday. We've all seen the movie, What's Happening. And if people open their eyes, they probably will recognize it's happening in their organization. It's I hate to use that metaphor of the frog boiling, but it kind of works where if that temperature in that pot goes up very slowly, you just feel like you're in a jacuzzi. And by the time you realize it's not a jacuzzi, it's too late. Maybe that's a little over the top, but we're all in a pot of water that's getting warmer every day as we're deploying this data and this AI. So this is a way to turn down the heat, if you will, and get that jacuzzi we seek. We can put up that final slide about learning more about Impetus Prism. That is our unified observability solution. There are ways to learn about the features and capabilities and use cases. There's even a sandbox where you can very quickly, using sample data from us or your own data, that's right, your own production data, with just a couple clicks, you can push it into the system, run it in the sandbox, and see what kind of insights it brings to you. So see firsthand what this can do for you. So I implore you and invite you to go and check out the Prism offering. And with that, I'd like to thank our speakers today, Carlos and Shilpi, and this topic, which has been amazingly, refreshingly insightful. And I thank you for your time today. And to our audience, best of luck as you dive into the era of AI and bring along maybe this life preserver of unified observability so that your journey is a successful one. Thank you very much. And back to you, Doug.
Well, thanks, Jeff. Great discussion, as always. So there you have it. Another expert roundtable in the books. We want to thank Shilpi, Carlos, and Jeff for that discussion, and we appreciate your attendance as well. Till next time, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review. Thanks for watching.
If your business would like to be featured in a future event, contact us today.